So our first topic of the day, I was right.
Cars as a service.
Now, with that said, some of the things that people were saying that I was wrong about are not actually addressed here.
Yes.
But Nissan has introduced their vehicle subscription. Cars as a service is here. So Nissan Switch will allow a user to drive a wide variety of vehicles on a month-to-month basis with no long-term agreements or contract required. So no loans, no leases, and no maintenance. And this is how they get you, because that sounds awesome.
Yep.
I'm not going to own my car, which makes me very uncomfortable, especially because, were you following the news? Car2Go, I think, is the one that just pulled out of Vancouver.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so Vancouver has a couple of those car sharing app companies in it, and I think the total fleet was around 6,500 cars, and then the biggest one just pulled out. They're going to take their whole fleet of 3,500 cars out of the market with them, and then the biggest competitors, like, we're going to bring in 500 more cars to, like, fill the gap, and it's like, that doesn't fill the gap
sound like
at all. And so the city of Vancouver, which has some pretty aggressive environmental, like climate change reduction targets or whatever, is like, oh, wow, this actually kind of sucks, because I think it was something ridiculous, like 35% or 45% of people in Vancouver used these cars. I don't use them because I live out in the burbs.
Yeah, it wouldn't make any sense here.
You need to own your own car. That's just the way that it is. Because our transit system here is abominable anywhere outside of the core, the city core. But anyway, I was floored by how many people use them, and then so
I know people that in Vancouver that don't own a car and actively use Car2Go. They don't have to use it that often because they can usually bike or walk wherever they need to get.
I know people who own a car and still use it from time to time. So David, for example, when we were going on a trip, he used a Car2Go to drive to the airport, because it was cheaper than a cab.
Oh, you just leave it there.
Because he drives himself, and you just leave it there.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's pretty smart.
For parking.
Big brain.
I was like, that's brilliant. But exactly. Thank you for that.
No worries.
I needed to get my daily meme quota. So anyway, it makes me deeply uncomfortable, because now all of a sudden people who have structured their lives, which these are like real decisions you're making about your life, when you're like, okay, I am not going to own a car and I'm going to rely on these car sharing services, are now abruptly put into a lurch where either they need to reshuffle their finances to figure out how to get a car, or they're at risk of not being able to get to work on time, or not being able to get their groceries conveniently, or they'll have to pay a lot more for a cab, or whatever the case may be. Fortunately, we have Uber now, so that's one helping hand, but
in some places.
It's much more expensive, of course. What were you going to say, sorry?
It's just also not everywhere, but that's where competition is going to be helpful. Like, if a bunch of companies did this, that would somewhat solve that problem. And if there was more competition than just Car2Go, that would somewhat solve that problem.
You know what? No, I don't buy it.
Okay.
I don't think competition's going to help at all.
Why?
How much did competition help us with online movie streaming?
Has
Netflix lowered their pricing?
That's the opposite, though, because if you the problem that you raised was like, I'm just gonna attach this to movie streaming, which doesn't seem as important, but sure, like, you need your movies. You have to watch your movies to make it to the next day, and Netflix closes down. It's not like you can't get movies. There's many other options.
Oh, I thought you meant competition from like a pricing standpoint.
No.
Okay, because
Because you were talking about like you have to make major financial changes in your life.
Yes.
Well, no, because there's probably a similarly priced other service.
Okay, yes, you're right. There will be competitors in the market, and that will help. But I think that in terms of pricing, if anything, I think everyone involved in this business is going to be trying to extract more value from it for a very long time.
And they'll probably like shake hands and all charge the same thing, pretty much.
Which is technically illegal.
But they'll probably do it anyways.
But it's not. Sometimes it's not even a matter of shaking hands. So going back to when I was working at the computer store,
you just look at what other people are doing?
Yeah, we kept a very close eye on what others were doing in terms of pricing. And even though I never would talk to a product manager over at Memory Express. I mean, that's the thing about the internet is I can just go on their website and find out what they're pricing things
I remember back when I was doing like remote IT for people, like high school-ish range, I went and fixed a laptop for a lady who her whole job was to pay attention to gas stations in like her general area and then call her gas stations, I don't remember what company she worked for, it doesn't matter, and make sure they all updated their pricing. That was her whole job, and she was like very successful. I was like, okay.
And with computer components, for example, it was very easy to discern what their pricing strategy was, because all you need to do is take a cross section of like a dozen different models of hard drive in different price bands, and go, oh, okay, so at the very high end, they're taking about 7.5 points margin. At the very low end, they're keeping those costs very low to try and get those low-end system builders to come in, buy their hard drive for their computer, and then grab a CPU, motherboard, maybe some cables, high margin stuff. Okay, sure. So we're gonna target the high-end customers. We're gonna go slimmer on the high-end stuff, and we're not gonna worry so much about shifting $40 hard drives day in, day out. And that'll be our strategy. So it's very easy to react and anticipate a competitor's pricing when you're just like a reseller or you're selling a service or whatever the case may be, and everything's available online. Let's talk a little bit more about what the Nissan vehicle subscription looks like, though. So you can switch cars, which sounds pretty cool. And if you're in a supported region, here's how it works. Right now, it's just Houston, Texas. So you sign up for Switch, download the app, and select your use case and your vehicle model. Interesting. So a concierge will deliver a car to you within the select service area, and for now, that is apparently a 20-mile radius around the South Main neighborhood in Houston.
This is very clearly just a test.
Oh, yeah. If you decide you don't like the vehicle that was delivered to you, you can switch it out for another one at any time with no limits.
Yeah.
There's no charge, and your concierge will help you transfer luggage, groceries, and other objects from vehicle to vehicle. Okay, 2 tiers. So there's Select and Premium. Why does Select mean cheap?
I have no idea.
Because Select used to mean like good, like in produce, Anyway.
Isn't there a grocery chain around here that their like brand is called Select?
I think there used to be.
Yeah, maybe not anymore.
Can't
but
remember.
I remember that being a thing.
Was that like the cola at Safeway or something?
Maybe.
Select?
Maybe.
Or Superstore or something?
I don't remember.
All I remember is I have never consumed an off-brand cola since this one time that I drank like one of them. Like I didn't even have a ton. I drank one of them before a drive down the Sea to Sky Highway from Whistler, which is about a 2-hour drive. There was an accident and we were stuck sitting on the highway for, I kid you not, like 2.5, 3 hours. And I peed myself not once, not twice, but like at least 4 times. Now, fortunately,
Why did you get out of the car?
Because you're on the Sea to Sky Highway. There's a cliff here, okay? There's a drop off here. There's a drop off here, and there were like cars on either side. Like there was no privacy or anything. Look, I was like 8. Okay, I was a kid.
All right.
Fortunately, my dad's car had leather seats at the time, so at least there was no lasting damage, but that was a very unpleasant and wet.
So now you don't buy off-brand cola.
Well, so some things have diuretic properties.
Sure.
And I have never had that experience. Like the way it hit me, like a ton of bricks. I have never experienced having to pee that suddenly and that badly before or since in my life. And it was some I think it was Select brand cola or something like that. Anyway, I will never drink off-brand cola. I actually don't really drink pop anymore anyway, but I will never drink off-brand cola in my life. Anyway.
I don't drink pop that often anymore either, but back in the day I was quite the consumer of off-brand cola, I'll say that much. Because you could get a 2-liter for like 95 cents.
But doesn't it bother you that you smell bad?
Smell bad?
No, well, if you're peeing yourself all the time.
Oh,
nah, dog, I got that gamer bladder.
Yeah, pretty much. Dude, I pee once a day. Kidding. Okay, so my biggest thing with this, Select is...
Hold on, I haven't talked about pricing. Okay, you tell them about the pricing.
Select is $6.99 with a one-time $495 activation fee. Premium is $8.99, which moves you to the Nissan Leaf, Maxima, Murano, Armada, Titan, and 370Z, or Z, whatever. and the option to drive a GTR for an additional $100 a day. My biggest thing with this
no
is
more than 7 days at a time, though. I guess they've just got like 2.
Yeah. You
okay.
Can't take the GTR for very long. It's not cheap.
No. And
it's like pretty expensive.
You're limited to 2,000 miles of driving or 180 days of general usage for each individual vehicle, whichever comes first, and then you have to switch. Weird.
Yeah.
So you're subject to all these odd terms and conditions.
So you like have to change your car.
But you can change your car. Yeah. And, you know, this is something really interesting. So when we were buying a minivan and we went to the dealer, I was trying to negotiate on one of the used ones before we ended up eventually settling on a new one. I think I remember telling you why I ended up buying a new vehicle.
Yeah, because I was really surprised.
Yeah, because the minivan is the first vehicle that either I or my wife has ever purchased new in our lives.
Yeah.
And the reason for it was that we basically came up with this whole like formula for how much the vehicle was costing, whether it was a used one or a new one, per unit of remaining lifetime. So we operated under the assumption that for a gasoline-powered minivan, 200,000 kilometers, so it's like what, 150, 160,000 miles or 140,000 miles, whatever. If you could convert that for me, that would be great. Yeah. 200,000 kilometers is about the trouble-free, hassle-free service life of a vehicle before you can expect 125,000 miles. Before you can expect, okay, it's going to be time to start doing, you know, new transmission, new, you know, power steering, like start to replace larger items that will start to affect your total monthly cost of ownership.
And your ability to use the vehicle.
The thing is, when you've got small children, sometimes it's not about how much does this cost me. Sometimes it's about what situation does this put me in? We're on a family road trip. We are in the middle of some mountain pass, and I have a bunch of kids aged 6 to 12 that are mad, and I'm like, my life doesn't need that experience. You know what I mean? So we operated under that assumption.
Or that's how you bond as a family.
No, it isn't. So there's a 200,000 kilometer sort of lifetime. And then what we did was we took every listing for a minivan on Craigslist, Kijiji, at dealerships, and we basically applied this formula. We went, okay, what's your model year? Well, the model year wasn't actually part of the formula. We just documented that. How much remaining lifespan do you have, and how much do you cost? And we looked at a cost per remaining lifespan. And what we ended up with was a value of, I think it was about $7 or $8 per kilometer, or per 10 kilometers, whatever the ratio was.
Okay.
But it was about a 7.5 to 8.5 for anything that was about 10 years old. And then it was in the neighborhood of 9.5 to 11 for brand new. And then it was actually in the neighborhood of around 10 to 12.5 for lightly used.
Kind of in between.
Yeah, so no, it was higher.
No, I was saying that for the category that's in between.
Yeah, so for anything that was like still the current platform, like before you're going back to like, that was a significantly older platform that car was built on. And so what we realized was that given that we're a young family and we're definitely going to drive this thing into the ground regardless of what we buy, the one that was going to cost us less to use,
was a new
unless we wanted to go for something really old, was actually a new one.
Which even just swapping your vehicle in general is kind of annoying.
It's a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
And so even with the additional insurance cost on a new vehicle, it ended up being more economical over time, and we are fortunate enough that we're able to make those kinds of decisions. Like, not everybody has the financial flexibility to go to Costco, realize paper towels on sale, and buy a year's supply while it's half the price.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, not everyone.
Or the like storage.
You need to have a certain amount of resources in order to optimize your use of resources. So fortunately, we were able to do that. We bought a brand new minivan. Anyway, when I was talking to the dealer and I was trying to swing a deal on a used one, they brought up something that I had never considered before. The season that we were buying a minivan in was road trip season. And I was like, what are you talking about, road trip season? He's like, look, it's a seller's market. We're not moving the price. We've had 4 people in looking at this van in the last 2 hours. And I was like, wait, back up for a second. People actually realize I'm going to go on a road trip and they go buy a minivan? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, why would they do that? So he goes, well, here's the thing. The rental companies only have a certain number of minivans in their rental fleets. So there's a finite number of them. And apparently people will book these many months in advance. So people know that they're going to go on a road trip next summer.
Sure.
They'll book it in October. And then when the time comes for people to go on their trip, there is nothing.
No available.
And they'll go, oh, well, we kind of needed a car upgrade anyway. And like, that's how people will make a purchase decision to buy a minivan.
So I was going to say, who the heck buys a minivan for a road trip? But it's not that really.
But what it is it's the push.
Yeah.
It's the
I
shove.
guess I need one anyways. I'll just do it now.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to go on this road trip, maybe we'll go on another one. This has been such a hassle trying to find something to rent.
I don't trust my vehicle to make it.
We'll have somewhere to put the hockey bags during the rest of the year. Okay, fine. Honey, let's just go buy a minivan. I go, wow, that's unbelievable. And because a minivan is such a non-emotional purchase decision. Like, the only reason anybody buys a minivan is because they need a minivan. Yeah. They don't want their dumb kids swinging open a car door and denting the car next to them, and then they got to leave a note, and then...
I never thought about that.
Minivan, okay.
That totally makes sense.
Minivans are so underrated. If you have a family, I don't understand why people do the 7-seater SUV. It's so much worse.
A sliding door is like protection for your wallet. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
It's not about the kids. That's about me.
That's pretty cool.
So anyway, where was I going with this? Right. So it's not an emotional decision. You only get a minivan because you need one. So what we discovered was that every minivan on the market was priced according to a formula. Whereas if you're looking at something like a sports car, it might come down to my
rarity.
My brother just picked up some weird Pontiac that's like a mid-engine design or something, and it's a super old thing. But for people who are into this car, it's like, whoa, yeah, wow, that's such a cool car. And my uncle has a Nissan 240 SX from it's like a 1991 or 92 or 94. I think it's a 94. And apparently that car's the coolest thing ever because both the front and rear wheels actually steer.
Oh, that's weird.
And that was a very unusual thing. And so people are super into this car. He gets compliments on it all the time. People are like, wow, that's in great condition. Are you a collector or something? He's like, no, I just bought this new because I thought it was cool in 1994, and I'm still driving it because I just haven't felt the need to get a different car. So anyway, where was I going with this? Right. Trade-ins, trading in the cars. We're finally coming around to the topic that we're discussing.
Okay.
I see that as a boon because different times of year have different requirements in terms of the kind of vehicle that you might want to be driving anyway.
So we're jumping back to cars as a service, not your minivan.
Back to cars as a service.
Yeah.
So the whole circular thing here was that during the summer, I think I would change more often than 180 days a year anyway. There,
okay.
That's what I'm trying to say, because a lot of the time I'd be like, hey, you know what? Patting about in the Leaf makes a ton of sense. Other times I'd be like, yeah, let's rip around in 370Z or whatever.
It's interesting.
And it comes with a lot of other cool benefits. So full detail washes, free roadside assistance, the convenience of being able to swap the car at any time, no maintenance. It's got sustainable liability insurance with no out-of-pocket deductibles for drivers. And you keep the car overnight, unlike car sharing services like Evo or Car2Go. So if something unexpected comes up in the middle of the night, I got the funniest drunk text from someone in one of my badminton group chats. They messaged our entire group chat at 3 a.m. and there's 120 people in it or something like that. Don't worry, I'm okay, I got home safe. So if something unexpected, like your idiot teenage daughter or son is out in the middle of nowhere at some point, you can just go hop in the car and go get them. Okay. Would you consider it at a price of $8,000 a year? That's a lot, isn't it?
No, I mean, I wouldn't at all.
That's less than you paid for your car that you've been driving for 5 years, isn't it? No, I think
technically no.
A little more. Yeah, it's a little more. Never mind.
I also paid my car off really quickly and then was like, yeah, no ongoing payments.
Car unpaid for, no car payment.
Yeah. I'm a little old in that way, I guess. But to me, it just seems too expensive. But I think part of this is not, I don't think they care. I don't think that's the point of this.
And I think part of it, too, is that they're trying to appeal to a really different buyer. Like, you don't pay for roadside assistance. I know for a fact, because the last time you broke down in the middle of the road, you called me.
Yeah.
So there's that. You don't wash your car. So how much value is there for you to having this detailed car experience? Some people, that's a lot of value, and they might actually pay on a regular basis to have their car detailed.
I specifically bought a car that breaks down very little, and when it breaks down very cheaply. That was a huge point.
Sorry, excuse me, accurate.
Same deal. That was a huge point of the purchasing decision, was like that it is not a big deal. So yeah, it's not for me. I think some people will be into this. I think a big part of it too is it's breaking the ice on these types of systems, and maybe more of these will exist. And then when they go, oh, now there's an option that's way cheaper, and you just have the car show up automatically when you need it. I think that will. They will already have the software out there. It's a really good way to test the apps, make sure all of that's working, and then eventually the concierges will just be automated driving cars.
Yes, and that'll be a whole next level thing once the fleets are autonomous.
Yeah.